والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
And God said, let there be light, and there was
Praise be to Allah, who showers His mercy on His servants and guides His obedient servants to the straight path. I testify that there is no true God but Allah, the one who has no partner, and that Muhammad is His messenger and servant. O Allah, bless our Prophet Muhammad, his honorable family, and all his companions. The topic to be discussed now is the history of religion and the origin of the true religion. Is it heavenly or man-made? Some people have claimed that the human being did not come to know the true religion as we now know it all at once. Rather, it developed over centuries during the prehistoric era known as the Stone Age. The original state of man, according to their claims, was ignorance. He did not know he had a Lord and Creator. The religious sense was stirred when early man saw the animals feared an invisible power, and feared thunder and lightning, of which he too was afraid. He began to search for a God towards whom he could express his feelings of devotion and loyalty, love and awe. It didn't matter to him whether this God was the sun, the moon, the stars, even trees or animals. Paganism developed from one form to another until man innovated monotheism or Tawheed by himself. In other words, religion is a purely human invention in these people's view. This is, of course, the position of evolutionists, the advocates of the Darwinian theory, who considered early man as having evolved from a common ancestor with apes. He was created deficient, unable to receive the great truth completely. Therefore, it would be meaningless to make man responsible for obeying his Creator or to make him his vicegerent on earth. According to this view, man was originally pagan, believing in falsehood, and monotheism was a later development. This development was the result of his own expanding cumulative experience and deeper contemplation, and did not come with divine guidance. Rather, as he advanced in science and manufacturing, he also advanced in his knowledge of Allah the Exalted. The treatment of human history is purely materialistic. There is no place in their worldview for Allah, nor for prophets sent by Allah to teach humanity how to live in accordance to His will. The result of this view is a denial of the human being's responsibility to his Creator. An example of their historical method is the way that the Orientalists treated the history of Egypt, Iraq, and the rest of the Middle East since ancient times. What has been completely left out is the call to Islam, borne by the messengers of Allah throughout the history of the nations which occupied these lands. They claim that the first monotheist in history was the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, whose original name was Amenhotep IV, who worshipped the invisible power behind the sun god Aton. They claim that his idea spread to Iraq, where Abraham established his religion. In other words, Islam, the religion of Abraham, was not a revelation from Allah. Now let us move to discuss the methodology of researchers in the origin of religion. Anthropologists have used two basic methods for seeking evidence of the earliest form of human religion. The first is archaeological, examining artifacts and written records of ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians, Sumerians, etc. The second is observing the religious practices of contemporary primitive peoples like the Bushmen, Pygmies, and tribes of isolated Indians in South America. They found those ancient civilizations and these modern peoples all practicing forms of idolatry and polytheism. Based on this evidence, they made the extrapolation that polytheism must have been mankind's original religion. But does their evidence really allow them to draw this conclusion? There are a number of problems not only in their methodology but in their aims. The first thing we must be clear about is that conclusive knowledge about prehistoric events cannot be obtained, which makes the goal of their research dubious. As for their methodology, it is based on the assumption that those primitive peoples and ancient civilizations had always been in the same condition as they were when we came to know of them, or were even more primitive in their beliefs in the preceding eras. This assumption is not founded on evidence. An alternative possibility is that these religious forms represent a degeneration from an earlier correct religion. Evidence for this possibility can be gleaned from the histories of known religions, from the beginning of history until today. Judaism and Christianity started out as pure monotheistic faith. Then they became mixed with distortion and falsehoods with the passage of time. Buddha was a reformer who introduced a number of humanistic principles to the religion of India. He did not claim to be God, nor did he suggest to his followers that he be an object of worship. Yet today most Buddhists have taken him to be God and prostrate to idols made in their perception of his likeness. So it is not far-fetched to suppose this phenomenon to have occurred in prehistory as well. It's amazing that researchers in the history of religions have ignored the histories of the prophets and feigned ignorance of their scriptures, yet they cling tenaciously to their ambiguous physical evidence. The strangeness increases and the calamity is greater when the researcher is a Muslim blindly following the Orientalists, even though the divine scriptures have spoken clearly, leaving no room for doubt, whether in reference to the creation of man, or the substance of his creation, or the system of his life, or the wisdom behind his creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said what means, and pursue not that of which you have not the knowledge, for surely the hearing, the sight, the heart, all of these shall be questioned of. And Allah said, I did not make them to witness the creation of the heavens and the earth, nor their own creation, nor do I take misleaders as helpers. If, as we have seen, scientific methodology cannot lead us to definitive knowledge on these issues, is there any other means to gain it? Verily, it's only the divine revelation which allows us to know the truth about the past, the present, and the future in those matters outside the reach of our minds and senses. Verily, it is only the Quran, the speech of Allah, the Almighty, the Glorious, which falsehood cannot come at from before it or behind it, a revelation from the wise, the worthy of all praise. The remote past is definitely part of the unseen, the ghaib. What we know of human history before 5,000 years ago is very little. As for what we know from before 10,000 years ago, it is less still. What is remoter than that is virtually unknown, of course, for one who is unconvinced that the Quran is a revelation from Allah. The Quran cannot be held